All right, so finally, the summary. As you're beginning to deploy Hyper-V into your data center environment, the first thing you're going to need to do is choose the appropriate edition of Windows Server. Data Center Standard Edition will support Hyper-V. Data Center will support a lot more connections and a lot more virtual hosts. So if you're building out, whether you're building out the initial instance or you're building up, there's also Hyper-V Server, which is just the bare metal. But if you're building out a GUI desktop experience version of Windows Server, your best bet is probably Data Center, if you have the money for it. If you have an eval copy license and you're just playing with it, go for Data Center. Understand, however, that Data Center will cost you more in terms of licensing, seat licensing, CAL, etc. Now, Hyper-V will require a 64-bit processor. You cannot do this on a 32-bit system. Honestly, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a server-grade platform these days which is not 64-bit. It has been normal for several years now. Hyper-V is also a server role that is installed in Server Manager, so it is like installing Hyper-V on your Windows 10 client. You turn that feature on. On the server, you install the role. This may bring some other roles with it. You do not necessarily need Active Directory if this is just a member server. There's the VHDX, which is our improved file disk format. VHD is the old way of doing things. VHDX is newer. It supports drives up to 64 terabytes. There are two generations of VMs. The Gen 2 is better, particularly if you need to support 64-bit OSs and use the security features of UEFI. Now, it only supports SCSI controllers. So if you need BIOS or supports virtual floppy disks and COM ports and IDE controllers, then you're going to have to go with Gen 1. So in terms of their GUI, you've got three areas. And remember, this is really an MMC snapping in that we're talking about. You've got your bar on the left, sort of your library bar, with listing the servers you can connect to. But the VMs that you want to connect to on those servers are not there. Those will be in the middle pane, top section. You'll have your list of in the middle pane, which is about 2/3 or almost 3/4 of the screen, depending. And you can resize these things a little bit, but the top third of that is the list of VMs and their current state in very brief detail. The middle pane is checkpoint information on a VM that's selected. The bottom pane is more detailed information on the VM that's selected in the top third of that middle pane. And then you've got your actions pane. You can use it both for global settings and for machine-specific settings. The virtual machine connection window is basically the console view of a given host OS. Integration services like integration services or integrated services, depending on who you're talking to, like VMware tools, will allow you to interact more smoothly with these VMs, most particularly with other Windows VMs, because the two registries can, for lack of a better word, talk to each other. You do have two different kinds of checkpoints, which are the equivalent of snapshots. The production checkpoint and the standard. Hold on. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I was quite certain of the definitions of these two things. A standard checkpoint saves both the memory and the disk state of the VM at a given moment in time. It's like the hibernate. If you were to put an OS into hibernation, one of the things it does is dumps this current state of memory into a hibernation file, hiberfile.sys specifically, so that when you wake it up, it can go right back to where it was. That is a standard checkpoint. A production checkpoint will save the machine state but ignore current applications. if you have a document open, for example, any change you made to that document since the last save will go away. It will be like setting that checkpoint and then turning the system off ungracefully. It will be like powering the system down ungracefully, of course, is honestly the right word. So the production checkpoint is mostly about the configuration of the system and not what it's currently doing. The production checkpoint, particularly if you've got a system that is going to stay up for long periods of time, and you need to checkpoint it every once in a while for whatever reason, so you can go back to exactly the way it was at a given point in time. Say you've got database commits waiting to happen. Of course, you've already probably, with a modern DBMS, you've probably also got a journaling file system and lots of other stuff going on. But in any case, you can get back to exactly the way things were. You can also do some things with your hard disks. You can edit your hard disk. You can shrink them, convert them, increase them. You can also use a differencing disk to link a child VM to a parent VM, so their two states are linked to each other, like a linked clone, rather than a full clone. Then there are our three virtual network types: external, internal, and private. If your VM is not going to be talking to the outside world in any way, say, for example, you're doing a vSAN, and your vSAN is only talking to other virtual networks, does it need to talk to the outside world in any way? You can probably do that internal or even private. Internal is essentially host only. External is bridged. There's really no equivalent here to the NATed mode you see in VMware Workstation. So that is the very high-level summary of Chapter 5. I hope you've watched and enjoyed the other videos. If you've got any questions, please bring them up in class. Thanks. Bye.